Today's daf is Kuf Yud Bet. We are at the top of Kuf Yud Bet with the 5 lines from the top with the 2 dots. Where it says Pshita. So actually it's 4 lines from the top because we have to read that piece of Miftach Chalukat said that the woman is allowed to tie the front of her blouse. So Pshita, this should be obvious. La tzrichat itla deidle tered dashe. Because sometimes they would have on these shirts 2 ties going across. So it's possible that what might you think? You might have thought that, since there are 2 ties in the front, she might leave one of them permanently in place and only untie one of them to remove the blouse. So therefore we needed to know that Kamash Malan, it comes to tell us that we're not concerned about that. In other words, the issue would be that if she's going to leave one of them permanently, then tying it on Shabbat would be making a permanent knot, which according to Rashi is an Isur Deoraita, and according to the Rambam would be at least an Isur Midrabanan. So the thing here is that we're saying that we don't assume that she's going to make this knot permanent because it's easier for her to take the shirt on and off, untying both straps. This is talking about the hair covering that she would wear. She's allowed to tie it up on Shabbat. So Pshita, that should similarly be obvious. This is only something temporary. You tie it and you remove it regularly. So what's the reason why the Mishnah has to mention this? So that if she has one that is relatively spacious, in other words, it's loosely attached to her hair, so you might think mishlaf shalfala that she's going to remove it without untying it, and since she might remove it without untying it, again, it might end up being a permanent knot. So therefore, kamash malan the isha chasal sa'ara u'mishra shari'ala, that a woman is going to, typically we rely on the fact that a woman is going to untie this hair covering. She's not going to slip it off, because to slip it off is going to ruin her hair. She's not going to want to do that. So even though it's possible to be concerned, we don't have to be concerned, don't tie that knot because you might leave it there permanently, because the fact is that we're going to assume as a matter of general practice that she is going to completely untie it before she removes it. So now we get to urtzuot min al v'sandal, that you can tie the straps of a shoe and a sandal on Shabbat. So itmar, it says in one braita hitir ritzuot min al v'sandal. So one statement permits it. Taneh chada hayav chatat, v'tanya idach patur balasur, v'tanya idach mutar lechatchila. So it was stated, that with regard to removing, to tying or untying the straps of the shoe and the sandal. So one braita says chayav chatat, that it's a biblical prohibition. One says that it's only rabbinic, and one says that it's fine, you're allowed to do it. Like our Mishnah seems to say you're allowed to do it, right? So which one is correct? Or what context is each one said? So kasha minala minal, kasha sandala sandal. Obviously this is a contradiction. Something cannot be both biblically prohibited and rabbinically prohibited and also permitted. That's not possible. So therefore, minala minala kasha hadikatani chayav chatat be'ushkapei patur balasur bidrabanan mutar lachatchila b'divnei mechuzah. So we have 3 cases. In one case it's prohibited biblically, in one case it's prohibited rabbinically, and in one case it's permitted. It's prohibited biblically the knot that the actual shoemaker puts into the sandal. In other words, when he fashions the sandal, there are certain permanent knots, like the knot of tefillin, for example. The knot of tefillin is an example of a knot that's created to last permanently and never to be loosened, right? Like the tefillin shel yad. Even on the tefillin shel rosh, the kesher of the tefillin shel rosh is not intended to be adjusted. Sometimes you have to adjust it, but it's meant to be permanent once you tighten it. So one is talking about the permanent knot that's done by a professional, such as de ushkape is talking about the one that the actual cobbler makes. The second level, the rabbinically prohibited level, is the one that the rabbis make. The rabbis would tie their shoes relatively loosely so that they didn't have to tie and untie them. They would just remove them while tied and put them back on and slip their feet into them. Right? So they actually tied it permanently. So why is it rabbinically prohibited? So according to the Rambam, it's easy to see, because the way that we follow, according to the Rambam, a permanent knot is only prohibited rabbinically. unless it is a professional and permanent knot. So the one that the sandal maker, the actual person, the shoemaker, puts into the shoe as part of the shoe permanently, that one is both professional and permanent. The one that the rabbis make on their shoes so that they can slip them on and off is not professional, but it is permanent. And then what's the last case? The people in Mechuzah were very particular about their appearance. So they would tie their shoes very, very tightly, and they would never leave them tied for more than a day. They would always untie it before the end of the day.
Which one of the Tanaim agrees with that only if it's a professional knot?
Well, this is a machloket rishonim, not Tanaim. So
no, I understand, right. But where do they take it? I mean, because we didn't hear any of the Tanaim.
No, nobody talks about that. So Rashi's interpretation of all the Gemarot about tying on Shabbat is that the only distinction is permanent versus impermanent. Rambam and the Rif and the Sephardic school of thought had interpreted differently and say no, there's actually two factors: permanence and also professional.
But we don't know where they get it.
Where they get it, that was their tradition. Rashi's interpretation is that there were the three levels are permanent, semi-permanent, and temporary. Basically, that's he only looks at it in terms of permanence, not in terms of the professionalism of the knot. So the Bnei Mechuzah would tie things very tightly, so they would remove it before the end of the day, so it wasn't even permanent. So that wasn't even a question. Now, sandala kashya. So what do we do with the case of the sandal, which is just another type of footwear? How do we deal with that? So the one that says chayav chatat, the one that says that it's biblically prohibited is b'tayayet. So that is when it's the Arab merchants, okay? So they were called tayya'eh, which is which means these travelers. They're Bedouin travelers. What? I guess it's not talking about laces. It says that dekatere ushkape, that the shoemaker would make permanent, in other words, only permanent knots in their sandals. They didn't have temporary knots.
And you can take them
on and off, I guess. I guess you would take them on and off. I guess that's how it worked. Yeah.
Well, it says the sandals were in merchant and strapped fastened to them by professional shoemakers.
Yeah, they were professionally tied up. Right. So now, patur av alasur. What's the case of sandals where it's only rabbinically prohibited? That's where you had a sandal that you yourself, in other words, average people use sandals. The Arab merchants had to travel very, very far, so they needed like the sturdiest knotted shoes. I guess the average people would have shoes that they attached the sandal straps themselves. So they were not permanent, but semi-permanent enough to justify it being rabbinically prohibited. And then, if you had a sandal that's being shared by two people. So in that case, since two people are sharing it, they're going to continually be tying it and untying it to fit it to the different people's feet. So it's not going to be something that remains in place for any lengthy period of time.
Sometimes it's he.
Yeah, that's coming. So, kid the Rav Yehuda, like Rav Yehuda, the Rav Yehuda, Ahava, the Rav Salah Hasidah, Rav Yehuda, the brother of Rav Salah Hasidah, Havale Hahu Zugad the Sandalei. He had a pair of sandals. Sometimes he would wear them. Sometimes his little son would wear the shoes, so he would have to obviously rework the straps to be able to tie them onto the son's feet. So he would have to tie them more tightly, more closely. So he went to Abaye and he said, Amar Leki Agavnamai, what is the story with tying sandals like this, where we switch back and forth between the two of us? Amar Leki said to him, Chayav Chatat, that is biblically prohibited. You can't readjust sandals back and forth between two people. So Amar Leki said to him, even if you had told me it was rabbinically prohibited, I would have not understood. Chayav Chatat Kamratli, how can you tell me it's biblically prohibited? So, my Tama, what's the reason? In other words, he asked him, what is the reason why you expected me to be lenient? Amar Lei said to him, Mishum de b'chol nami zimnin nafik nabe, ana zimnin nafik be yenuka. He said, because sometimes I go out with them and sometimes my son goes out with them, my little son. So therefore I'm adjusting them to the size. So then he said to him, I said, if that's true, then mutar lechatchila, you're right, it's permitted. In other words, he thought, when he originally asked him, Abaye thought that he meant actually refixing the sandal, like actually redoing the sandal from one size to another. That's like a permanent change. In other words, if I were to take my shoe and I were to adjust the straps in such a way to rework the entire shoe, so like, for example, adjusting someone's head tefillin is a good example of that. In other words, if you're changing it, but you're changing it to be permanent. So that, you wouldn't be allowed to do that kind of thing where you're changing the knots around permanently. He thought he meant he was changing it around for his son permanently. He said, no, sometimes I use it, sometimes he uses it, so it's just a temporary tying. Not that I'm reshaping the shoe. I'm not remaking the shoe each time. Just the laces are being tied differently each time. He said, well, in that case, that's okay. Rabbi Yirmiyah havak azel batrei Rabbi Abahu. One time Rabbi Yirmiyah was walking behind Rabbi Abahu, the Carmelit. They were in a place where it's prohibited to carry midrabanan in a Carmelit. This is a place which is not really a fully public domain, but it's not really a fully private domain. So if sikrit suad the sandale, the strap of his sandal became broken. Amar le, he said to him, Mayni avadla, what can we do with it? Amar le, he said to him, Shakol gemi lach techazeh lemachal behema uchroch ilave. He said to him, take a soft reed that is capable of being eaten by an animal. In other words, why does it have to be edible to an animal? Because otherwise it would be muktzeh on Shabbat. You wouldn't be allowed to handle reeds just on the ground. It has to be something that's animal food. So take a reed and fasten the sandal, refasten it with this makeshift fastening, and walk home with the makeshift fastening. So that's what he did. Okay. In another case, though, Abaye was with Rav Yosef once. If sikle ritzuah and his sandal broke, Amar le, he said to Rav Yosef, who was his teacher, what should I do with it? Amar le shivakeh, you should leave it here. Don't even carry it, just leave it. So wait a second. Why is it in the case of Rabbi Yirmiyah, when he had this situation that his sandal broke, that he was told to fix it, to put in a makeshift fastener and to repair it and walk home with it, and you're telling me I can't even touch it? So what's the difference? He said to him, the answer is Hatam la mintar, hamintar. The fact is that right now we're in a place that's safe, so you can leave it here. He was in a place in the middle of a Carmelit. Remember, he was in the middle of a semi-public place. If he left his sandal there, he would come back later, and do you think it's still going to be there? Unlikely. Somebody's going to walk off with it. So it wasn't safe. But we're in a place that's safe, so you don't need to carry the sandal with you. You don't need to repair it and walk with it. So therefore, I'm telling you, just leave it here and come back later in order to get it. So he asks him, though, but wait, still, the hamanahu, isn't it still a mana? Isn't it still a vessel? In other words, why can't I even touch it? You're telling me I can't even touch it now because the strap broke, so now it's muktzeh. Because it's not functional anymore. A non-functional thing you can't use. But it is functional. It's not muktzeh. Why? Because if I want to, the small, I can turn it from right to left. In other words, I can flip it around and still use the sandal. Because if you see a picture of the sandal, which I was hoping that Rabbi Reuben was going to come today with his pictures that he had yesterday, it shows you that their sandals were reversible. You could switch them from foot to foot. You could switch them backward to forward. So since you could switch it, if the strap on one side breaks, you can flip it around, and that strap will now be an inside strap instead of an outside strap. You can flip it from front to back, so that the back strap, if the front strap breaks, the back strap can be the front strap. Okay? And so he said, I can flip it around and use it that way, so what's the problem? Amarle, he said, he doesn't answer him. Okay? Amarle, or rather, he does answer him, but it's a lengthy answer. So he said to him, well, I can flip the shoe around, which means it's still functional. It's not functional in its normal way, but I can flip it around and still wear it. It'll be functional on the wrong foot, or it'll be functional backwards. Amar le, midika mitaretz Rabbi Yochanan alibad Rabbi Yehuda shema min halacha Rabbi Yehuda. From the fact that Rabbi Yochanan answered the question according to Rabbi Yehuda, I can see that the law follows Rabbi Yehuda. And since the law follows Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be a problem to move this sandal. Let's see what he means. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Detanya, as it says in the Braita, sandal shenifzeku shete oznav, o shete tarsiotav, o shenital kol hakaf shelo tahor, achat meoznav, o achat mitarsiotav, o shenital rov hakaf shelo tameh. Rabbi Yehuda omer nifzeka penimit tameh, achitzona tahor. So what does this mean here? It's talking about we know a general principle in the laws of purity and impurity is that if an item becomes damaged and it's no longer functional, if it's broken, it loses its status as a kli, it loses its status as a vessel, and therefore since it loses its status as a vessel, it can no longer be susceptible to tum'ah. Right, not only that, it can actually lose. If it's already tameh, it can even lose its tum'ah if the vessel breaks. So what we're talking about here is what is considered a broken sandal. So according to the first opinion in this baraita, we said that if the two ears, now the two ears refer to the back part the back straps that would go like the flap in the back, okay, where your heel would be placed, and where you would put the shoe on, where you would slide your foot in. That's the oznaim. Shetei tarsiotav are the places on the side where the straps are affixed. Okay, on the side of the foot where the straps fit in. Okay, so it says if the two of them were broken, or the two pieces in the back that support the heel were broken, or if the entirety of the sole is gone, then you have no shoe. However, if only one of the two pieces in the back, or one of the two side pieces, or if only most of the sole is removed, but some of it is still there, it's still intact. It's still a shoe. Rabbi Yehuda says, though, no. If the inner strap is broken, if the inner, one of the tarsiot is broken, or one of the inner oznaim is broken. In other words, by inner he means if this is your right foot, then inner is the one next to your other foot. Outer is the one that faces to your right. So this is your right foot. This is inner. This is outer. So what's the significance? Because if it's inner, he says, that it's still tameh, meaning it's still a vessel if the inner one broke. Both of them don't have to break though. If the outer one broke alone, now the shoe is broken. Why? Because if the inner one breaks, you would repair it. Nobody really looks at that side of your shoe. It's the outside of your shoe that they're going to see. So if the outer one breaks, then you're not going to want to do a makeshift repair.
They say broken and
it's torn,
irreparable. In other words,
it could be repaired, but it's not going to look nice anymore.
In other words, it just cannot be used at that.
Right, at that time, obviously, it could be repaired later. Right, but we're talking about right now a makeshift repair. So if the outside of the shoe becomes ruined, basically, he says that you're not going to repair it in a makeshift way because it's going to look bad. The inside of the shoe, don't worry. You'll be, nobody's going to notice that part. But the outer part of the shoe where the strap is affixed, you don't want that to be ruined because if you fix it with some like Band-Aid or something, it's going to look horrible. So you're not going to want that. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says even losing one of those pieces, if it's one on the outside of the shoe, then it's going to make the shoe considered broken. Until obviously, if it's fixed to look like new, that's a different story. But and what happened was that Ula said, and some say it was Rabbi Bar Chana, and some said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that just like they have a machloket regarding impurity, so too they have a machloket regarding Shabbat. Meaning that according to the Chachamim, unless both of the ears in the back are broken, unless both of the side pieces are torn, unless the entire sole is removed, that's still considered a shoe, not only for the purposes of impurity, but also for the purposes of Shabbat, that it's not muktzeh. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if the outer piece is torn out, it's automatically muktzeh. Okay, so now the Gemara says,
basically what they're saying is that if the chalitza, if the widow would, were to spit on that one, that would be a valid.
Right, he's saying avalola inyan chalitza, but it would still be good for a shoe for chalitza. Right, so chalitza is where the woman. So if a woman marries a man and the man dies without having children, so the brother either has to do yibum, marry to marry the widow, or he has to do chalitza, where she removes his shoe and spits on the ground, and then says, and that's how they get divorced, so to speak. So you need a kasher shoe. You need a shoe that's really considered a shoe. So this sandal is still considered a shoe, apparently, even though for purposes of Shabbat and for purposes of Tum'ah, it would no longer be considered a shoe. Now, what you see is, though, that this is all responding to Abaye's question, because Abaye's question is, why can't I just reverse the shoe, make the outer the inner, and I'll be good? So you see that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold that, because Rabbi Yehuda is saying that if the outer one gets ruined, even though you could flip it around and make that the inner one, it doesn't matter. Otherwise, his halacha wouldn't make any sense, right? In other words, Abaye's question was, if a strap breaks and I could reverse the shoe, So then it's still a good shoe, even though I'm not wearing it in the normal way, it's still functional. So the answer to him was no, because if that were true, if reversing the shoe made a difference, in other words, if you could reverse the shoe and it still functions in an abnormal way, but it still functions, if that is considered still a shoe, then why does Rabbi Yehuda say that if the outer piece is broken, it's not a shoe anymore? He should say just flip it around, then you can still use it.
But then assume that the reversal of that shoe does not break any Masekhet Shabbat.
Reversing just means turning it around. Yeah, that's just turn around. Yeah, you're not doing anything. Yeah, you're not doing anything. But you see that the fact.
Not like this.
You're like reversing.
What?
No, the other side of the shoe.
Either it means, in some cases it means to make the front the back. In some cases it means to make the right the left. Okay? But the point is that either way, like in the case of Rabbi Yehuda, what he's saying is, you see that even though, let's say I'm wearing my right shoe, and the outer part of the right shoe is ruined. So I could just switch shoes, make that my left shoe, now it's the inner part, so it should be okay according to Rabbi Yehuda. So he doesn't say that though. Yeah. So obviously he doesn't think that just that's still considered an intact shoe because I can reassign it to my left foot. So what do we see from that? That he's not going to say that if it breaks, that you just say, oh, I'll just switch feet and then I'll be okay. Or I'll switch it around, I'll be okay.
You might not like it only in that case because...
Well, so far we're saying kamachloket, just like there's a machloket in Tumah, also Shabbat, which means he's going to say that the shoe is mukteh if the outer strap is broken, even though you might be able to reverse it, it doesn't matter. Right. But for chalitza, he's saying that it's still good. So now the Gemara asks, we ask the following question. Rabbi Yochanan alibademan, who is Rabbi Yochanan following here? Who does Rabbi Yochanan hold like? If he's following the rabbis, in other words, he's saying that when he says, just like there's a machloket about Shabbat, or just like there's a machloket about impurity, there's a machloket about Shabbat, and then he says, but regarding chalitza, no. That's what he says. No what? So if he means the rabbis, so just like they hold that when the outer strap alone is broken, it's still a shoe, they disagree with Rabbi Yehuda unless both of the pieces are broken. When the outer part alone is broken, they say it's still a shoe, both with regard to purity and with regard to Shabbat. But they're going to say, aval chalitzan lo, but they're going to say, but not for chalitza? That doesn't make any sense. Why should it not be considered a shoe for chalitza? In other words, if they're going to consider it a shoe for purity and they're going to consider it a shoe for Shabbat, why is it not a shoe for chalitza? That doesn't make sense. We learned in the Mishnah, because we learned that if the woman takes off the left foot from the right foot, in other words, the left shoe from the right foot, so he put his left sandal on his right foot, and she takes it off. She has to take it off the right foot. She's normally supposed to take the right sandal off the right foot, but she took the left sandal off the right foot. It's still a good chalitza. Right, so you see that even though the strap maybe had to be reversed, maybe this guy reversed. He took a shoe that had been his right shoe, right, and he switched them. In other words, he took the left shoe and he put it on his right foot because, let's say, what was the outer strap is now the inner. He wanted to switch it, and yet they still recognize it as valid.
So chalitza means that when
it can't be
when you mix that switch, the chalitza is not valid.
No, it is valid. That is valid. That's what. In other words, so it can't be that. In other words, it can't be that the rabbis say the chalitza is not valid.
In other words, we know already.
Right, we know that it is valid. Right, it is valid. So Ella aliyah the bad Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, it must be Rabbi Yehuda. Umi de leinyan tum'ah lav manahu leinyan Shabbat nami lav manahu avala leinyan chalitza de manahu. Does it make any sense to say that if you're going to say with regard to Shabbat, it's not a shoe? And with regard to impurity, it's not a shoe because the outer strap is broken. You're going to say with regard to chalitza that it is a shoe, right? So Emar da amrinan chalitza shel smol biyamin chalitzata kshera hecha de lemilte manahu hacha lemilte lav manahu taha Rabbi Yehuda nifseka chitzonat tahor alma lav manahu. In other words, what he means is like this: that when you have an intact shoe on your from your left foot and you put it on your right foot, it's no problem. Right? And the rabbis are going to say that that's no problem. And even Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that's not a problem. But in a case where the shoe itself is no longer, in other words, when you move the left shoe and it's intact and you moved it to the right foot. But in this case, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that's not even a shoe anymore because the outside strap is broken. Maybe there he's not going to, why would we assume that he's going to consider that acceptable for chalitza. He shouldn't consider it acceptable. In other words, because Rabbi Yochanan was saying, whatever you hold about the first two cases, you hold the opposite for chalitza. So the rabbis can't hold the opposite, because they hold that it's good for Shabbat, it's still a shoe for Shabbat, it's still a shoe for Tumah, and it's still a shoe for Chalitza. So with Rabbi Yehuda, what are you going to say? It's not a shoe for impurity, it's not a shoe with respect to Shabbat, but it is one for Chalitza. How could you say that? How could that work? So rather, so the Ha'amar Rabbi Yehuda, right? So Le'olam Ali Rabbi Yehuda, really it's Rabbi Yehuda, Ema v'chen l'chalitza. What he meant to say was, and so too for chalitza. Not that it's a contrast, but it's the same. In other words, just like for Shabbat it's not a shoe, just like for impurity it's not a shoe for chalitza. And the rabbis hold that it is one for all of those things.
So what was the point he was trying to make?
It was a misquote. Apparently he was misquoted. He's just trying to tell you three applications of this halacha. Okay? V'had kamashmalan, and we come to see dechiyam rinan chalitza shel smol b'shel yamin chalitzata kashera, and therefore we see that when we say that removing the left shoe from the right foot is a kasher, the chalitza's kashera, that is echad lemilte manahu. That's only if it's a left shoe that's still intact. However, but here, according to Rabbi Yochanan, this shoe is not even a shoe because its outer strap is broken. And since its outer strap is broken, even if you moved it to the right foot rather, it's not going to make it anymore an intact shoe. So now we say, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi, did Rabbi Yochanan really say this? Amar Rabbi Yochanan Halakha Kistam Mishnah. They ask this question on Rabbi Yochanan all the time. Rabbi Yochanan said that any anonymous Mishnah is authoritative. Utnan, and we learned in an anonymous Mishnah, Sandal Shenifsaka Achad Mi'oznav V'tikena Tameh Midras. That if you had a sandal, that one of its pieces in the back, one of the things that it goes around the heel was broken, and you fixed it, it retains its status of tumah. It became tameh before. It broke, the piece in the back broke, and then you repaired it. So my love lo shana penimit v'la shana chitzona. Doesn't this imply that it doesn't matter if it was the outer or the inner one? Okay, meaning that even if the outer one breaks, then the shoe is still a shoe. And Rabbi Yochanan, you said that you follow Rabbi Yehuda, that if the outer strap breaks, if the outer pieces break, it's not a shoe anymore. So how can you reconcile that with this Mishnah that clearly does not differentiate between an outer and inner? So it says no. He says, Lo penimit dafka, aval chitzona mai tahor. I'll tell you that no, really, only the outer strap being broken or outer pieces being broken make the shoe lose its status of tum'ah. But the inner ones, if the inner one is broken, it's still considered a vessel. Alright, so what the Mishnah was saying, when the Mishnah here is saying that if the piece is broken, it's still a vessel, it's only talking about the inner part, according to Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, he's trying to reconcile this with Rabbi Yehuda's position.
Here it says it's still considered on the grounds that it may be repaired and switched to the other foot.
Right, it can still be switched.
It has to be on that ground.
Right. So it's still salvageable.
Right.
So if so, tahor min midras. But then why does it say if the second? So why in the second part of this Braita, or in the second part of this Mishnah rather, it says that if the second one is broken, now it becomes tahor. Aval tameh magamidras, but it's considered a lower level of tumah because it's as if, in other words, this shoe that broke, both of its pieces broke. It's considered like it touched itself, so therefore it's tameh. It's a derivative tumah from its original tumah, but it's not the full tumah once you've repaired it. So v'niflog b'dida, why don't we make a distinction within? If there's really a distinction here between outer and inner breaking, why don't we just say if the outer one broke, then automatically it's considered to be tahor. It loses its status of a vessel. And if the inner one did, then it doesn't. Why do you have to say, well, if the first one did or if two did? Why do you do one or two? One or two shouldn't make a difference. It should be either inner or outer. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef said, Mishnatenu b'sandal sheyesh lo arba uznayim ve'arba tarsiyotim shelo lishbor dvarav shel Rabbi Yochanan. The only solution we can suggest is like this, that here we're talking about a case where there are four pieces, two on either side, not just one. And therefore, since there are two on either side, what it means is, if only one on the outside is broken, in other words, the other way around. If only one on the inside is broken, then it is still going to be considered tameh. If two on the inside are broken, now it's tahor. You see? In other words, because what he had said, but on the outside, even one of them being broken, it's going to be tahor.
But why
that seems to be what he's saying.
The inside? Because both can be repaired and switched, and then that'll be both good.
Well, the thing is that according to what he's trying to do here is he's trying to reconcile this Mishnah with the position of Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda had said that any damage on the outside of the shoe,
right, so
automatically it loses its status. So he's trying to reconcile. So this Mishnah, why does this Mishnah say, well, if one of them broke and you fixed it, it's still intact. If two of them broke, now it's not going to be intact anymore.
Does it make a difference?
Right?
You can
the question was, why do we say that why do we say one versus two? Why don't we just say if the outer one is broken, then it's automatically losing its status. And if the inner one is broken, then it's still good. Then it still retains its status. Why do you say one or two, implying that they're equal? Inside and outside are equal,
right. Which
according to Rabbi Yehuda is not true, because outside is much more significant than inside. Inside being broken, you'll do a temporary repair and you won't care about it.
And it doesn't
outside is the problem. Outside is automatically no good, right? So the Gemara says, how do we reconcile? This Mishnah seems clearly to be saying that outside and inside are the same.
Right. It's
just that when one's broken, it's okay. If two are broken, now it's not okay, right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, if the outside one is broken, it's not okay.
Okay.
Right? If the inside one is broken, then it's still okay.
Right.
Okay, that's the way he's interpreting it. So then, why does it say one or two? So it says, well, because we are talking here about having two inner ones and two outer ones. Okay.
But if it's two inner ones, then both are okay.
So why does it say two? It means two. Two of the inner ones. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, if one of the outer ones is broken, even one of them, it's not going to be good anymore.
Okay, but if we're
so when it says one and two, it can only be talking about one of the inner ones, or two of the inner ones, right?
Otherwise, the principle goes
right. One of the inner ones or two of the inner ones,
right.
Because it can't be because even one of the outer ones automatically has to disqualify according to Rabbi Yehuda, right? That's what it is. So now but why did they assume it's talking about a case that has four pieces instead of two? Because they didn't want to they didn't want to make Rabbi Yochanan inconsistent. So it must be that he was interpreting the Mishnah as a case where the sandal had two inner pieces and two outer pieces, and therefore you can still maintain that it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda, because even according to Rabbi Yehuda, even one of the outer ones would disqualify the shoe, but you need two of the inner ones to disqualify the shoe. Basically, that's the way that it's being interpreted now. So Ki ata Ravin Amar Rav Chanan bar Abba Amar Rav. So when Ravin came from Israel, he said that Rav Chanan bar Abba said that Rav said halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda, that we follow Rabbi Yehuda with regard to sandals. But Rabbi Yochanan Amar ein halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda, but that Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Yehuda. Wait a second, what are you talking about here? Rabbi Yochanan hachi va'amidim mitaret Rabbi Yochanan ali b'd Rabbi Yehuda shema minaka Rabbi Yehuda sevir. We just said all along that Rabbi Yochanan was supplying answers to the problems in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda's position, because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda about sandals, that even if the outer piece breaks, it's automatically not a vessel anymore. So how can you tell me that he doesn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Answer, that Amora'e ninhu, that these are different interpreters. V'alibad Rabbi Yochanan, students of Rabbi Yochanan were debating what Rabbi Yochanan himself held. And that's why some said that he endorsed the view of Rabbi Yehuda, and some said that he rejected the view of Rabbi Yehuda and held like the Chachamim, because we saw from before that it seemed like he held like Rabbi Yehuda, because he wanted to say that when he talked about the Chalitza, when he was saying that just like the same position that we hold about these other areas, we hold about Chalitza. So now we say as follows: Tenanatam, we learned over there, Kol kalei balei batim shiuran karimonim. If you have a vessel in the house, and again this is talking about purity and impurity, if it's a broken vessel, it loses its status of impurity, right? So what size of breakage do you need? Karim monim. It has to be the size that a pomegranate could pass through. So ba'e, they asked a question was asked, and it should say here Chizkiah, not Rebbe. Just Chizkiah. Chizkiah asked, Nikav kemotzei zayit ustamo. What happens if a hole the size of an olive was broken through the vessel and you plugged up the hole? V'chazar v'nikav kemotzei zayit ustamo ad shehishtlimo lemotzei rimon. Mao. So he said like this, let's say a little puncture is made in the vessel and you plug it. Another puncture is made and you plug it again. Another puncture is made and you plug it again. So what do you have now? An area of repair that's actually the size of a rimon. It's the size of a pomegranate, but it didn't emerge. There was never at one time a hole the size of a pomegranate in the vessel. First there was a hole the size of an olive, you plugged it. Another hole the size of an olive, you plugged that. Another hole, you plugged that. So each time you kept replacing it with pieces of pottery. So there was never actually a hole the size of a pomegranate there, but there were individual holes the size of an olive. So what do you do now? Since in total now you have an area that's been repaired that's the size of a pomegranate. If you were to remove the repairs that you did, you would have a hole the size of a pomegranate. But you never actually had it in existence. So what do you say? Amar le Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi, my teacher. He says, Shanita lanu you taught us. Sandal shenifzeka achat me'oznav v'tikena tamei midras, nifzeka shniya v'tikena tahor min midras. You said that if you have a sandal, that one of its pieces was broken and you fixed it, it's still tamei. In other words, if it was tamei before, one of its pieces broke and then you fixed it, it retains its tumah. Nifzeka shniya v'tikena tahor. But if the second piece broke and then you fixed it, tahor min midras aval tamei maga midras. That it no longer has its original tumah. However, it's considered like it touched itself, so it has a derivative level of tumah, just like something that's instead of it having the highest level of tumah here, it would be the next level down, the next level down of tumah. So he says, va'amrinan lachem, we said to you, ma'ishana rishona da kayema shiniya, so daha kayema shiniya. What's the problem? In other words, why is it that when only one strap breaks or one piece breaks, that we didn't consider this shoe to be broken? Because there's still a second strap. So shniyanami mitakna rishona. So also when the second strap broke, you had already fixed the first one. In other words, there was never a time where the two were broken. Number one broke, you fixed it. Then number two broke, you fixed it. So why is it that after the first one broke, we didn't say that the shoe was totally broken yet? Why not? Because the second piece was still intact. So when the second one breaks, after the first one has been repaired, why now does it change the status of the shoe? It shouldn't, because the first one was already repaired. So what's the difference? Va'amart lana, and you said to us, va'amart lana leha, and you said regarding this case, panim chadashot ba'u lechan. Hachanami panim chadashot ba'u lechan. He said what you told us was panim chadashot ba'u lechan, which means to say that it's a new entity. In other words, you replaced it piece by piece, but at this point you have a new entity. It's a totally new thing. So by the time, in other words, when you replace the first strap, we say, okay, you replaced the strap on a pre-existing sandal. But once you already replaced two straps, you made a new sandal already. It's a new thing. It's like the old paradox. There's an old Greek paradox that's still mentioned nowadays. If you take a piece of a boat and you replace it, and then you take off another piece of the boat and you replace it, and you take another piece of the boat and you replace it, and you replaced all the parts, is it the same boat or is it a new boat? Right? Piece by piece, you keep replacing pieces. Like, let's say you have a car. You get a new engine, and then you have to get new doors, and then you have to get... So after a while, there's no part in the car that was from the original car. So is it a new car? So it's the same thing here. That's what he's saying. It's a new thing. Well, they asked. That was one of the questions they used to debate. The philosophers used to debate. But that's what they're talking about here. That once you've taken both pieces and replaced them, you already have a new shoe. So he says so too. Yes, you never had one hole the size of a pomegranate. But if you look at all the repairs, you repaired a hole the size of a pomegranate. And you know what that means? This is a new vessel. And since it's a new vessel, whatever tumah it had before is gone. That's how he answers him. And they said to him, and this is where they were so impressed with him. So Kareale let den bar enash. They said, this is not a human being. Meaning, he's an angel. This guy's a genius. This guy's inhumanly intelligent. Ikad Amri, some say, Kigon den bar enash. Some said, this is what a person should be. In other words, this is a true man. This guy knows what he's talking about. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rava. Amar Rabbi Zera said that Rava said, Bar Zimuna. I'm sorry, that's the name. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rava, Bar Zimuna. And what does it say on the side? It says that should be what? It should say Bar Abba. Okay. So it should say Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rava Bar Abba. Im Rishonim B'nei Malachim. If the earlier generations were like the children of angels, Anu B'nei Anashim, we're just the children of humans. Vim Rishonim B'nei Anashim, and if the early generations were human, Anu Kachamorim, we are like donkeys. Velo Kachamor Shel Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. v'shel Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, ela kishar chamorim, and not like the special donkeys of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa and Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, that we have all of these famous stories about how they were so careful about eating food that was kasher, not eating stolen food, not eating untithed food, and all of that, or not working on Shabbat, whatever they did. That they were trained in having a spiritual sense. We're just like regular chamorim. We're not even as good as these great chamorim of the past. So now, in other words, the point is that Rabbi Yochanan had a really brilliant answer here, and the people were overwhelmed by the sharpness of the answer. V'nodot yain v'shemen. So we said that if you have a pouch of wine or oil, you're allowed to tie it on Shabbat. And we have again a question that Pshita, this seems obvious because it's a temporary tying. You only tie the top of the bag so you can open it and pour it out. So why is it even a question? Again, the same thing. Just like we said about the blouse and we said about the hairpiece. If you have the hair covering, if you have two straps, then you might think you might keep one of them closed. In other words, let's say you have there were two folds on this pouch. So you tie one and you tie the other one. Now you might say, well, I'll leave one of them closed permanently and I'll just open one of them to pour out the contents of the pouch. So the answer is that we're not concerned about that. That you might think that you're going to leave one of them there. So Kamash Malan, we say that we're not concerned that you're going to leave one of the flaps permanently sealed. And similarly, Kedera Shel Basar Pshita, that it said that you can tie a cloth over the pot of meat. So why do you need to know about this? It should be obvious. The answer is where you have a flap. Again, since there's a flap on this covering, you might leave it tied permanently on the pot. So the answer is we're not concerned that you're going to tie it permanently on the pot, and therefore you're allowed to tie it. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Kushra. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says you can tie a rope in front of an animal in order to block it from walking out of its stable or whatever it is. So Shita, this should be obvious again, because you only tie it there temporarily. You're not going to tie it there permanently because later you're going to want to let him out. So the answer is La Tzrichad Itla Tarte Esare. Again, it's where you had two ropes that you put one over the other one. Okay, so
it's like the horses in the cowboy movies.
Yeah, they have those rope fences that they put. Yeah, so Rashi says Shnei chavalim kosher b'rachav petach, that you put it across two ropes, one over the other. He says lishana acharina. Another possibility is that it means treus reisha koshrina yom b'shnei tzidei petach v'lo hayta tuliya b'metmol, or it means you're tying both sides of the rope. In other words, that it's tied permanently on one side and you're tying the other side. Okay, so either it means two ropes or it means two ends of the rope. But either way, you think you might think one of these ropes you're going to leave permanently. In other words, let's say there's two ropes. Maybe you'll leave the lower one there permanently. You'll just open the upper one and the horse can step over the lower one. Right? Or if it's talking about two ends of the rope, it means maybe you'll tie this rope onto the fence, and then you're going to leave one end of it permanently tied there. So then it would be a permanent knot. So Kamash Malan, we're not worried that you're going to leave it permanently tied there, because that's not the normal way to do it, to create a problem for yourself, because now it's going to be difficult to get the animals in and out. So therefore, we say that it's only temporary. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel. Rav Yosef said that Rav Yehuda said that Shemuel said, Halacha ke Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We follow the Mishnah, we follow the teaching of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So Amar le Abaye said, Halacha miklal depligei. Are you suggesting that the rabbis, Abaye asked a question, are you suggesting that everybody else disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? That everybody else says that you can't tie these two ropes, or this one rope, across the, to hold the animals in their pen? Is that what you're saying? That it's actually a machloket? So he said to him, no. Amar le may nafkalach mina, what difference does it make to you? We had this exact same exchange a couple of dapim ago about another issue where the statement was made, halacha ke so and so. The halacha follows somebody, and Abaye says, are you telling me it's an argument? And he said, what difference does it make? The halacha still follows Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Even if everybody agrees with him, it still follows it. So he said to him the same answer that he said then. Amar le Gemara Gemor Zamor Tatehe. Is the teaching that we teach, the tradition that we learn, just a song? Meaning it doesn't matter if we're accurate or not? When you say the halacha follows Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, you're implying that there's a machloket here. And you're telling me it doesn't matter if it's really a machloket, because the bottom line is that we follow that ruling of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, whether it's consensus or not. I say it does matter, because why would we record this information just for the heck of it, basically? You're telling me that there's no purpose, that as long as the bottom line works out, we don't care? The entire Talmud is based on the premise that the bottom line is not the only thing that matters. Because if the only thing that mattered was the final decision in every case, you wouldn't have all this discussion along the way.
Yeah, but the premise is that everything is known from tradition, and the exercise of the...
Not everything, because sometimes you have arguments, because sometimes you have different opinions and different schools of thought.
To find where it is derived
where
from.
they derived it from.
But if you reach points where you have no idea where it's derived from, it's still the tradition.
Right.
It's a tradition.
But the point here is that why would... He's saying, so you're telling me that the fact that we recorded that... You're just going to tell me halakha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and you don't really mean it? You really mean the halakha is like everybody, but it doesn't really matter because it's the same difference? So now you're telling me that we're not concerned. We're always concerned, who does this Mishnah follow? Who does this Braita follow? Is there a machloket? Is there not? We always want the truth. We don't just look at the practical bottom line. So that's what he's questioning. It's just a song that the halakha follows Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and it's a good question.
Because the truth lies in the tradition that was transmitted from Moshe, whether you're able to reconcile it or not.
That's true, but here it's different because he's making a specific statement about what a certain rabbi held, or whether the halakha follows a certain rabbi, and the statement has implications, and he's saying either way the implications are okay, so I don't care. But normally we do care because we take every statement and we say, what are the implications? Right. What are the implications? What can we infer from this? What can we derive from this? Say, no, don't derive anything from it. Where do you ever hear that? So he has a good question on him, and we'll conclude here for tomorrow.